Good morning, evening, or night, wherever you are. Welcome to WHAM today. Take a deep breath, clear your mind, and let's drift through the whispers of today's world, one quiet thought at a time. As we wrap up Thursday, 7th August 2025, let's see what stories are unfolding around us. United States President Donald Trump's new tariff rates on U.S. imports from multiple countries have taken effect, aiming to reshape global trade. U.S. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick suggested a likely 90-day extension of the U.S.-China tariff truce, pending a trade team and presidential decision. The U.S. also added a surprise tariff on gold bars, impacting Switzerland, and the number of Americans filing for jobless benefits modestly increased. Oil is headed for its longest losing streak since 2021, as traders believe U.S. efforts to resolve the war in Ukraine will not impact supplies, even with Washington penalizing India for taking Russian crude. Over 1,000 United Airlines flights in the U.S. were delayed due to an undisclosed technology issue. Turning to Australia, stocks initially rallied on hopes of a rate, but later declined due to the performance of banks and energy stocks. Light & Wonder delisted from Nasdaq to concentrate on the Australian market. Liontown brought in a significant Chinese investor to work alongside taxpayers. 4 individuals were charged in Australia for laundering scam funds using cryptocurrency. Meanwhile, in China, U.S. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick suggested a likely 90-day extension of the U.S.-China tariff truce. Liontown brought in a significant Chinese investor to work alongside taxpayers. In Panama, U.S. Ambassador to Panama Kevin Marino Cabrera criticized Panama Ports Company, a subsidiary of Hong Kong-based Hutchison, and advocated for its replacement. Across the Pacific, the Bank of Japan, BOE, could end its wait-and-see approach if a U.S. tariff hit is mild. The U.S. tariff on gold bars had a direct impact on Switzerland. In India, an exporters' body is seeking policy changes to address the impact of U.S. tariffs on gems and jewelry. The U.S. is penalizing India for taking Russian crude, even as oil prices decline due to perceived ineffectiveness of U.S. efforts in Ukraine. Finally, in Canada, the TX experienced a flat or downward tick as investors assessed earnings and the effects of U.S. tariffs. India is facing potential economic headwinds from the United States, which is considering doubling tariffs on Indian merchandise exports to 5% due to India's continued purchase of Russian oil. The U.S. views these purchases as support for Russia's war efforts and is seeking to reduce India's reliance on Russian energy. These tariffs could impact India's $434 billion merchandise export market, potentially diminishing its competitiveness and increasing costs for spices exported from India. National Security Advisor Ajit Doval visited Moscow, with Russia asserting India's right to choose its own trade partners. The Indian stock market has generally been declining since late June due to these tariff concerns, along with weak earnings, high valuations, and foreign capital outflow. Despite the broader market downturn, Titan's share price saw a 1% increase after a 53% net profit increase in Q1 26, while MAP India's share price increased by 2% due to strong Q1 results and new investment announcements. Gift Nifty trends point to a weak opening for the Indian benchmark index. Russia is standing by India amidst the tariff dispute with the U.S., defending India's right to choose its trade partners. This support was voiced as India's National Security Advisor Ajit Doval visited Moscow in response to the U.S. tariff threats over India's oil purchases from Russia. The U.S. is pressuring India to reduce these imports, which they believe fuel Russia's military actions. The United States, under the Trump administration, is intensifying pressure on India over its continued purchase of Russian oil, which it sees as supporting Russia's war efforts. The U.S. is contemplating doubling tariffs on Indian merchandise exports to 50% as a consequence, seeking to diminish India's reliance on Russian oil and to economically isolate Russia. This move could significantly affect India's export competitiveness in the U.S. market. Saudi Arabia's national debt has climbed to $225 billion, exceeding the combined debt of Iran and Iraq by 4 times. The Saudi main index closed at 10,930, showing negative movement despite individual investment portfolios in the Saudi stock market seeing a 13.5% increase in Quant 25. Saudi Arabian Oil's second quarter 2025 earnings did not meet projected targets. The country is currently revising its unemployment target, citing key contributing factors. Aqua, PowerSec, and KEPCO have secured $3 billion in financial backing for 3.6 W power projects located within Saudi Arabia. Intellect Design is partnering with Bank Al Balad to improve its cash management systems. Madden is moving forward with its final investment decision on the AR Rhino gold mining project. The UAE's market valuations are considered attractive when compared to those of Saudi Arabia, according to the Azimuth Group. Saudi Arabia will host the first regional deployment of OpenAI models via Human Grok partnership. Synergy Quantum has launched Saudi Arabia's full-stack quantum cybersecurity facility at the Garage, with support from the Ministry of Communications and Information Technology. A new report forecasts the Saudi Arabia OTC artificial tears market for the years 2025-2033, noting key market players such as AbbVie, Alcon, and Novartis. On the international stage, Saudi Arabia is calling for global partnerships to support landlocked developing countries. Japan experienced a notable financial recovery as SoftBank Group reported a $2.90 billion profit for the April-June quarter, fueled by successful artificial intelligence investments. Trade relations with the U.S. faced new challenges when Japan voiced concerns over an extremely regrettable error in a U.S. tariff order, revealing potential discrepancies in the interpretation of their finalized trade agreement. Despite a trade deal that reduced auto levies to 15%, major automakers like Toyota, Honda, and Nissan forecast significant profit declines, highlighting the vital role of the auto industry in Japan's overall economic health. The U.S. committed to rectifying the double tariff oversight, which had initially contributed to the Broad Topics Index reaching a record high, exceeding 3,000 points. Despite the positive market movement, foreign investors ended a 17-week period of continuous buying in Japanese stocks. In the entertainment sector, WorldGates Versing collaborated with Gunda to launch an interactive live streaming karaoke experience for the Japanese market. China saw a significant economic rebound in July, with exports climbing 7.2% and imports experiencing their fastest growth in a year. This growth was partially fueled by a temporary halt in President Trump's tariff hikes, which encouraged businesses to capitalize on the trade respite. The Chinese stock market was on track to close the week at a 10-month peak, mirroring the optimistic economic figures, even as Hong Kong's market lagged due to disappointing earnings and deflation fears, undoing a 4-day surge. Semiconductor Manufacturing International Corporation, SMIC, placed on the U.S. Commerce Department's blacklist in 2020, indicated that Trump's tariffs did not lead to the expected hard landing for the company. China is also prioritizing the advancement of brain-computer interface, BCI technology, with firms like Nanjing Panda Electronics and Microport Neuroscientific receiving government backing to cultivate global competitiveness by 2030, challenging entities such as Elon Musk's Neuralink. Trade between China and Russia reached a 2025 high in July. Simultaneously, President Trump floated the idea of levying a 25% tariff on China for buying Russian oil. Russia has seen a surge in trade with the UAE since the 2022 invasion of Ukraine. President Sheikh Mohammed of the UAE held an official visit with President Vladimir Putin. The Russian stock index climbed on news of a potential meeting between President Putin and President Trump. However, Russia's budget deficit has surpassed its annual target within 7 months. A drone attack caused a fire at Russia's Avipsky oil refinery, which has since been extinguished. Moscow summoned the Italian chargé d'affaires, protesting an anti-Russian campaign. Island Shore's alleged financial schemes are being investigated for potentially aiding Russia in evading international sanctions. The U.S. President Trump has set a Friday deadline for a Russia-Ukraine deal. A strategy to enhance Western sanctions on Russia is being proposed through strengthened enforcement. United Kingdom. Tax increases are on the horizon as Prime Minister Keir Starmer has not ruled out raising VAT, income tax, and corporation tax. The Financial Conduct Authority, FCA, will lift the ban on crypto exchange traded notes, it ends, for retail investors starting October 8. As the labor market weakens, interest rates are expected to fall to 4%. The pound's value has increased after a Bank of England meeting. Turning to Ukraine, hopes for a ceasefire have boosted global stocks and led to the largest increase in European shares in over 2 weeks. President Zelensky has stressed the importance of European involvement in the Ukraine peace process. Meanwhile, Russia hosted President Trump's special envoy, Witkoff, as the ceasefire deadline neared. The Kremlin announced that President Trump and President Putin are slated to meet soon. Globally, stocks have risen due to optimism about a potential ceasefire in Ukraine and speculation regarding a possible interest rate cut by the Federal Reserve. European stock markets have experienced mixed performance, shaped by economics, geopolitics, and policy. Early trading saw muted openings due to unease over President Trump's new tariffs, creating confusion among business leaders. The trade war has contributed to lagging European earnings compared to the U.S., hindering overall market recovery. However, market dips have attracted investors, resulting in share increases despite the tariff threats. Healthcare stocks have specifically weighed down European shares following President Trump's trade actions. The Bank of England's meeting, earnings reports, and ongoing tariff concerns are all influencing these market movements. Recent trading saw the largest jump in over 2 weeks, boosted by optimism regarding a potential ceasefire in Ukraine. In addition, the scheduled meeting between President Putin and President Trump has contributed to positive market sentiment. Switzerland is facing a significant economic challenge after the U.S. imposed a substantial 39% tariff on Swiss exports. This development, described as a horror scenario by Swiss officials, stems from the Trump administration's decision. The Swiss government is convening an extraordinary meeting to strategize a response and intends to persist in negotiations with the U.S. regarding these trade barriers. The Swiss gold refining industry, a crucial component of its economy, is particularly affected, leading to skewed trade statistics. The tariffs have contributed to a spike in gold prices amid rising demand for secure investments. South Korea experienced stock market gains, propelled by reduced anxieties about possible U.S. tariffs. The cryptocurrency landscape in the nation reveals a split, with up, bit, and by thumb expanding, while Klarna is selling assets worth $2.96 million. Delisting review standards have been tightened, raising the minimum sales requirement to 700 billion won. The Blockchain Development Acceleration Center of South Korea, BDADX, is actively promoting institutional adoption of XRP, foreseeing a potential price increase beyond $3.09. Foreign capital is being invested in South Korean tech stocks, driven by AI optimism. The government plans to stimulate a 20 trillion one market using stablecoins and digital citizenship programs. In the corporate sector, OutSystems has named Saigon An as its new country manager for South Korea. Hong Kong's financial sector saw Manulife Investment Management bolstering its presence by hiring senior executives from Lombard Odier and State Street. Investment strategies are shifting, with dividend-paying stocks in Asia highlighted as attractive investment opportunities for August 2025. China's inflation data continues to influence market sentiment, contributing to initial volatility in Asian stock markets. Despite this, most Asian indices closed with gains, buoyed by optimism towards the end of the trading day. Japan stood out as Tokyo's Nikkei index experienced a significant surge of 2%, diverging from the general trend in the region. European markets mirrored the Asian experience, demonstrating mixed performance throughout the trading session. Taiwan is currently riding a wave of tech industry growth, driven by the global surge in artificial intelligence demand. This boom is evident in the stock market's strong performance in July and a notable increase in foreign investment in Taiwanese equities. Adding to this positive economic outlook, Taiwan has so far avoided any immediate adverse effects from the proposed 100% chip tariff once suggested by former President Trump. Concurrently, Taiwan is addressing internal security concerns by investigating potential illicit activities within its high-tech industries, including scrutinizing 16 Chinese companies and Gertech, a supplier for NVIDIA, over accusations of unlawfully recruiting high-tech professionals. South Africa's rand is strengthening on global markets, supported by increased gold values, even with the onset of new U.S. tariffs. The country is pursuing full membership in a significant African trade bank, deepening its involvement in continental finance. The expansion of online retailers Shine and Temu in South Africa could jeopardize around 34,000 domestic jobs. The equity laws in South Africa, previously criticized by Donald Trump, may create challenges in upcoming tariff negotiations. The nation is considering joining an international effort dedicated to promoting diamonds. By 2025, South Africa is expected to rank among the top 10 African nations, with the largest share of institutional investors. The Dow Jones Industrial Average dipped, yet the Nasdaq Composite soared to a record high following tariff implementations. The United States saw President Trump nominate Miran to a seat on the Federal Reserve Board. Miran was initially considered for a temporary role as Fed governor. United States President Trump raised concerns about the global semiconductor supply chain by threatening to impose 100% tariffs on chips. Furthering his focus on domestic investment, President Trump announced that Apple would invest an additional $100 billion in the United States, following tariff threats on products manufactured outside the country. Thailand, Vietnam, and other Southeast Asian nations are contending with rising tariffs on exports containing Chinese components, sparking debate over the United States' criteria for defining locally made products. Turning to Israel, the nation has announced plans to retake Gaza City in an escalation of its conflict with Hamas. However, according to Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's office, these plans do not involve a full occupation of the Gaza Strip. In Canada, BCE has revised its revenue guidance upwards following the completion of the Zipline deal. Even as the broader Canadian stock market closed lower, with the S&P TSX Composite Index dipping by 0.57% party. Meanwhile, Leighton, a company based in California, is poised to acquire factories in both Germany and Sweden from Northvolt, a Swedish battery manufacturer that has declared bankruptcy. In Singapore, analysts are evaluating the nation's accomplishments over the past 6 decades and contemplating future development strategies for the city-state. Shifting focus to France, President Emmanuel Macron is adopting a more assertive posture towards Algeria, advocating for a firmer stance in their bilateral relationship. Across the Gulf states, major stock markets are witnessing declines attributed to corporate earnings reports, a stark contrast to Egypt, where the stock market continues its upward trajectory. The United States anticipates slight gains on Wall Street as tariffs imposed under President Trump's administration come into effect. From Bolivia to Indonesia, a trend towards increased dollarization is becoming increasingly evident. Lastly, in Nigeria, the stock market constitutes 25% of the nation's gross domestic product, GDP. And that's a wrap for today's news, because even headlines need a nap. Stay curious, stay kind, and let the noise fade as you find your quiet. Take care, stay awesome, and I'll see you next time on WHAM today.